Joe was a platoon sergeant, and so was I. So we were kind of competitive. And so one day Joe came to me and he said, you know, they keep bringing these guys over here from the Middle East for us to teach them how to fight these tanks. And he said, I'm not too sure I'm in favor of that. And I wonder if we shouldn't try to shut it down at some point. Well, what he was talking about was, like on Friday afternoon, you know, you'd shut it down, you could go home. So we'd get in our tanks, we'd have 8 of them lined up there, and the Middle Easterners would bring their tanks up, and they would have a berm up, so you know you couldn't get to them. And so Joe and he'd say, you know, what do you want to do? I want to get out of here. I want to go to the bar. And I'd say, okay, Joe, but we gotta do this the right way. He said, okay, you do it. I'll catch on. That's some statement. So here these targets would come along, and there'd be this berm as big as this area we're in, and they'd come along and there'd be a target up there. And so my guys would blow a hole in the berm with a 90mm HE shell, and Joe's guys, when they would get to the hole in the berm, he'd blow up the steam locomotive that's blowing the U.S. government there. We'd all go home. These days, I'm not too proud of that. It did happen. And and then another thing that happened was, you heard about it, Joe got control of a big piece of the Alaskan pipeline. So Joe would call me up. By that time I had moved along and he'd moved along. I was running some stuff in Las Vegas. And so,
like the MGM brand.
So Joe would call me up and he'd say, well, I'm going to come up, and this is way before the MGM brand, but he'd call up and say, I'm going to be in town tomorrow and I need to cash some checks. I said, well, okay, you come to my house. And he'd say, well, the only thing is, the checks say stuff like, you know, Joe Schmeichenbike is the payee. And I'd say, oh, well, okay. So then he'd say, well, but it's a big number. and I would say, well, okay, do me a favor, don't talk to anybody. Come to my house. So he got some Schmeichenbike checks when he wanted to. But that was Joe, and I knew him well enough to know if he was going to embarrass me, he'd never say that. If there was anything wrong with it, he'd never say it. But you know, getting a little break on his income tax, it was okay. Anyway, we'll miss him, and he was a very close friend, and he was. I hope I'm not repeating myself, but Joe was the best man at our wedding 51 years ago.
No, 52.
52. So anyway, as we said on the
and I'm only 37, so that's really.
Wow.
Anyway,
Smile, Carol.
God bless you, Joe. Rest in peace.